Sounds good, don't it? It's just something about the sound of a box call makes it a must-have for the spring turkey woods. And today we're going to talk about the box call, talk about some of the construction of it, and the preparation for the box call, and of course we're going to get into making some sounds with the box call, and we're doing it right now. So guys, first a little bit about the box call. You know, it's just like, I mean, generations upon generations have been using box calls for calling turkeys. And it's just always amazing to see some of the ages of these things. You'll talk to somebody and they'll want to show you an old turkey call that they found in the house or whatnot, or somebody gave them from years ago. And it's just really cool to see those old relics. But the design and construction of a box call has not changed a whole lot. I mean, it's a pretty simple design. And, you know, when we call it a box call, you can see why. It's a, you know, it's got a box style design, and it's got a lid that kind of comes over it, and just a two-part that more or less produces those sounds. And what we're looking at here, this is a solid body or a carved body, and I call this like a boat style. And as you can see, it kind of looks like a carved canoe, and you know, indicating the name of it being a boat style. And what we have here, this is a walnut body with a cherry lid, and you can see these things in a plethora of different woods. But all in all, I mean, it's, you know, it's just a box call. And you know, some of the pros and cons of using a box call is that, well, first let's talk about the pro, and that is, in my opinion, they are super loud. I mean, you can really turn the volume up and crank it out there and strike that gobbler. That's why I always have a box call with me, even if I'm making like a little minimalist dash into the woods. Maybe, you know, I'm just going to do one last little hoorah before, you know, I call it. I'm going to grab a box call. That way I might can strike them and get them fired up. Now, the other pro that I would say about them too is that they're just, in my opinion, they're just pretty. I have a lot of box calls. I buy a lot of box calls, and I just like owning them. I just, you know, I like to see the different styles. I like to just purchase new ones and run them, and they're fun to buy for me. But so that's a pro in my opinion. But the biggest thing that I would say is that it's a loud call that you can use to really strike that gobbler and get his attention. It will carry. Windy days, you can really hammer on that thing and cut through that wind if you need to. And so it's just it's a must-have in your vest. I mean, it's like going back to any of the calls that we talk about. When you have that box call, it's just another arrow in your quiver, and you know, you might go 3-4 days of hunting without ever pulling it out, but you know, when you decide it might be the right time to use it and you strike that gobbler, you're going to be glad you had it in there. So just talking about a little bit more of the design of it though, or well, not so much the design first. We'll talk about a con of it, because when we talk about the pros and cons, one of my pet peeves about a box call is that, you know, if you put it in your vest, then you can get this little squeaking and rattling and whatnot, and because of the design of it. So as you'll see, you know, many call makers now will use such as this, or, you know, or they might have like a rubber band or some type of silicone fixture that can fit up there and more or less snug it up. And of course your vest, they have features in them that'll help it to silence as well. But as you can see, what I put on these calls is it's just a little piece of silencing cord, so I can run it through the bottom of the boat there, and then, you know, it wraps around that paddle and allows it to give it a little bit more silencing capability when it's in my vest. So I kind of got like a little bit of a two-fold silencer by the time I put it in my vest or the call pouch, along with that cord there, and you can see it holds it in place pretty good. And so, but jumping into some of the use of it now, you know, one of the things that's really important about a box call and is the chalking of it. And as you can see there, that bright blue color, well, that's what we're looking at there is chalk. And what you'll want to use is you can go to, you know, many different sporting goods stores and pick up, you know, turkey call box chalk. But really what's most important is using an oil-free or a carpenter's chalk. And pick this up at the hardware store. And the way I do it is I just basically, you know, that whole lid, everything I can pretty much reach. You have a very small striking surface that actually hits on that body, but I'm going to take and just put chalk all over that. And I'm going with the grain right now, and then I'm going to take and go against the grain too, because I want to make sure I got chalk like just everywhere on there. And keep your fingers off this. You don't want a box call to get wet. You don't want it to get any kind of oil on it or anything, or bug spray if you're, you know, coating up in the morning. You know, you want to be careful not to do that. I've got box calls that you know, the finishes are marred from spraying DEET and getting ready to go in the woods. But right there, I've chalked, you know, the lid pretty well. And I also will take, and right there on the striking surface, I'll also hit that and put a little chalk on it. And you really just can't overdo it. Chalk is kind of messy. You want to put it in a little baggie or whatnot in your vest, because if it's just floating around in there, it'll get everything. Everything will have that blue color to it. So, but you can't really overdo it. Keep it chalked. You will find that, like, especially, you know, as the calls get used more and more, where it's striking on that the body, it'll get kind of smoothed down where it won't even accept chalk. You know, maybe you've cut with it so much or whatnot that it's just like it's almost like polished, and it'll still produce those sounds. I've found that, like, as calls get older, a lot of times they use less chalk, but they still sound great. And so, but you'll want to, especially a newer call, you know, just keep it chalked up until you learn how much chalk it needs and how often you need to chalk it, you know. And so getting into some of the sounds of it though, again, just like with a pot call, your grip is going to be one of the key factors here, because, you know, if you were to hold this like full-handed like this, it's going to take some of that tone out of there. So you want those walls to be pretty much free. And so if you look down in that body, it's, you know, it's solid down towards the bottom. And so holding it along the bottom here or holding back here on the handle is going to give you your best bet into leaving those walls to where they can resonate well without your fingers kind of muffling it out. And so over the years, I've just kind of learned to where this is the way I hold a box call. You know, you, like I said, you can hold it by the handle, but me personally, I feel like I have better control of it when I use like a grip like this. I got 3 fingers on this side and these 2 fingers on this side, kind of create more or less a cradle for it to sit in. And jumping back on the grip now, what I like to say is you want to have like a firm but kind of a light but firm controlled grip is kind of what you want to focus on. You want the call to do the work. You know, you don't want to be like, you know, squeezing too tight on the lid or squeezing too tight on the body. You want to just kind of have a, you know, it can't be so light that you're not getting any friction, and it can't be so firm that it sounds like a duck choking, but you want it to be just, you know, just kind of really light, like you're picking up something that's fragile, and you need to be able to firmly pick it up, but you can't squeeze so tight that you would break it. I mean, that's really the best way I can describe that. But, you know, and it's a lot of this, you know, just like with the pot call and using that striker, it's going to boil down to your grip and how much pressure you're putting on the call and or the body and the lid. Just like with the pot call, how much pressure are you putting in your fingertips when you're holding the pot, and how much pressure are you putting on the striker as you hold it. So you just got to kind of learn to like articulate that pressure the right way as you learn to mimic the sounds of the turkey. And so just a light kind of sweeping motion, and I'm just dragging that lid across there to create that yelp. And again, if I do it really slow, it's hard to make it sound like a turkey. When I speed that up, I'm getting that 2-note yelp. And so in talking about the yelp, that's what I've been kind of hitting on mostly, and that's largely what I do with the box call is yelping and cutting. You know, I've seen guys that will purr with them, and you can do that, but what we're going to talk about today is just the yelping and the cutting with it. And then briefly we can talk about like a cackle with it. You know, that's another great call that you can produce with the box call. But, you know, again, just real quick on the yelp, because we've been hitting on it, you know, just kind of sweeping it, just bringing it across the lid. And one thing I failed to mention too, this is a two-sided call. A lot of times you'll have calls that might be a one-sided call, and that means that when that lid comes across to here, there's more or less this wall here would come up and make it stop. So it's a one-sided caller, whereas this one's a two-sided caller. And so, but the yelp, again, just dragging it, and you can just hear how loud that is. I mean, that right there, oftentimes when a gobbler's being real tight-lipped, you can, you know, hit those loud yelps like that, and it might just be a courtesy gobble, but he might give up his location and help you to develop a strategy to move in closer and maybe call him in. So moving on though, when we talk about striking, you know, another great call for the box call is cutting. And there's a couple ways you can cut with a box call. You can use it in like a striking motion like this, where I'm just taking and more or less, you know, hitting it this way. Or I can take and put a little back pressure, as you see there on the lid, and then I can tap. So there's two different ways you can cut with it. And then also, if you wanted to tone that cut down, make it more like a cut or a cluck, then you'll just want to tighten this little gap here and then soften up your tap. So you can quiet it down just a touch, you know. But again, because of the, with a cluck, you know, I typically won't do that. I mean, I'm gonna classify that more as a cut, just because it's pretty excited and it's got that volume to it. Whereas like I'm gonna utilize a mouth call or a slate call to get that clucking sound when I'm wanting to tone it down some. But you know, you can cut and cluck with that same back pressure like that. But just summing up with the box call though, I mean, in my opinion, it's a must-have for the spring turkey woods. I mean, it's you know, you can really reach out there and get his attention and strike those gobblers, figure out where they're at, and move into his bubble. I mean, even if it's just a shot gobble and he's not going to say anything else, at least you know that you heard a gobble or a gobbler respond up in those woods. And sometimes that box call will pull it out of them when nothing else will. And so again, this is a solid body or a carved body boat style design, and it's got the little silencer. Very important to, you know, have a way to keep those things quiet, because as you're moving through the woods, you don't want it making all that racket. But you know, summing up in general, as far as like using the call, you know, I emphasize it over and over again. I don't care what kind of call you're using. Don't get too caught up in, you know, sounding exactly like a turkey, you know, whereas like, because just like us, we all talk a little bit different. Turkeys all sound a little bit different, but more so focus on that cadence, the way that she's, you know, the rhythm that she's trying to produce. And once you dial that in and listening to more turkey sounds and practicing your calls, learning to mimic that with the different types of calls, then you're going to start seeing more success in the spring woods. So drop me a comment below if you got any questions about a box call, or any calls for that matter. And if you got any questions about, you know, turkey hunting in general, I just love, you know, getting questions and trying to help you guys out. You know, spring gobbler season is underway here in Virginia, and we've been knocking heads. I'm getting some great content out there, and got a couple hunts that I've already put up there, and I got more to come. So you guys be sure and stay tuned with me. And like I said, if you got any questions about any box calls or any calls for that matter, just hit me up. And looking forward to talking to you guys again. We'll see you.